The Middle East, a land of ancient history, where civilizations have risen and fallen for thousands of years, stands at a crossroads once again. From the windswept deserts to the vibrant cities, this region has always been a tapestry of cultures, faiths, and ambitions. Yet beneath the surface, old rivalries and new tensions simmer, threatening to erupt at any moment. In recent weeks, the Middle East has become a stage for modern conflict, as the fragile peace that once held is shattered. The streets echo with the sounds of military patrols, and the scars of past battles are visible on every corner. Tensions have reached a boiling point, and the world watches anxiously as events unfold. The shadow war between Iran and Israel, long fought through proxies and covert operations, has now exploded into open warfare. Missiles streak across the night sky, illuminating cities with sudden, terrifying bursts of light. Fighter jets roar overhead, and the thunder of explosions shakes entire neighborhoods, leaving civilians in a constant state of fear. What was once a covert rivalry has become a direct and dangerous confrontation, threatening to redraw the region's security map and destabilize not just the Middle East, but the entire world. Diplomats scramble to contain the crisis, while military leaders weigh their next moves in tense war rooms. The stakes have never been higher. The escalation has been swift and brutal, catching the world off guard and forcing the international community to scramble for solutions. Emergency summits are convened, and the United Nations holds urgent sessions, but answers remain elusive. Newsrooms buzz with activity as journalists race to keep up with the rapidly changing situation. This story explores the 12-day war, the shattered ceasefire, and the immense human cost of a conflict that has spilled into neighboring countries. Families are uprooted, homes destroyed, and hope is in short supply. Humanitarian organizations rush to provide relief, but the needs are overwhelming. As leaders gamble with millions of lives, ordinary people in places like Beersheba and Tehran are left to endure the consequences. Daily routines are upended, and uncertainty hangs heavy in the air. For many, survival has become the only priority. The question is no longer if the conflict will escalate, but when and how. As the world holds its breath, the fate of millions hangs in the balance, and the next chapter in this troubled region's history is about to be written. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. The so-called 12-day war marked a terrifying escalation between Iran and Israel, plunging the region into a level of violence not seen in decades. What began as simmering tensions quickly erupted into open warfare, as both nations unleashed their full military might in a desperate bid to assert dominance and deter further attacks. The world watched in shock as convoys of tanks rolled across borders, fighter jets streaked through the night sky, and artillery thundered across the desert. The scale and speed of the conflict left little time for diplomacy, as each side sought to inflict maximum damage on the other. The war's opening salvo came when Iran launched a barrage of missiles at the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar, a key hub for American and Allied operations in the region. This was a direct retaliation for an earlier American bombing campaign that targeted Iran's nuclear facilities, a move that had already sent shockwaves through the international community. In response, Israel wasted no time. Over the next several days, Israeli fighter jets launched wave after wave of airstrikes deep inside Iranian territory, targeting military installations, weapons depots, and critical infrastructure. The skies above Iran were lit up by explosions as the world's media broadcast the devastation in real time. But Iran was not deterred. Its missile forces retaliated with equal ferocity, launching salvos at Israeli cities. Sirens wailed in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as civilians scrambled for shelter, and emergency responders raced through the streets to tend to the wounded and contain the chaos. As the death toll mounted and the risk of a wider regional war grew, the international community scrambled to intervene. In a dramatic turn, the United States and Qatar stepped in to broker a ceasefire. The announcement, made by former President Donald Trump on social media, sent ripples of relief and skepticism across the globe. Israel, under the leadership of Prime Minister Netanyahu, quickly accepted the terms. The government claimed it had achieved its main war aims, degrading Iran's military capabilities, destroying key infrastructure, and establishing air superiority. Israeli forces began to withdraw, but the mood remained tense and uncertain. Iran's response, however, was far more ambiguous. The foreign minister announced that attacks would cease only if Israel halted all operations by 4 a.m. But the final decision rested with Iran's supreme leadership. Behind closed doors, Iranian officials debated their next move, weighing the costs of continued conflict against the risks of appearing weak. Around the world, Journalists, diplomats, and ordinary citizens watched anxiously. Public squares filled with anxious crowds, glued to their phones and televisions, waiting for any sign of what would come next. At the United Nations, urgent meetings were held as leaders debated how to prevent the fragile ceasefire from collapsing. As the hours ticked by and dawn broke over the Middle East, the world held its breath. Would the ceasefire hold, or was this merely a brief pause before the next, even deadlier round of conflict? The answer, everyone knew, would come soon enough. In the final hours before the ceasefire, Iran launched its most ferocious attack yet, a massive missile barrage targeting Israel. Beersheba, the capital of the Negev, was hit hard. A missile struck a residential building, killing 4 and injuring at least 20. The blast shattered windows, set cars ablaze, and left rescue teams scrambling through rubble for survivors. Even reinforced safe rooms couldn't withstand the direct hit. The attack sent shockwaves across Israel, forcing authorities to shut down airspace and heightening national fear. It was a brutal reminder of civilian vulnerability and Tehran's ability to strike deep inside Israel. For many, the moments before the supposed peace were the most terrifying of the war. The ceasefire, if it came, would arrive too late for some. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. The ceasefire, announced with hope, was meant to halt the violence. Israel stood down its offensive, and for a brief moment, calm returned. But just an hour after the truce began, air raid sirens blared across northern Israel. Missiles from Iran were incoming. Israel's missile defense systems intercepted the projectiles, but the attack shattered any illusion of peace. The violation was a clear signal. Powerful factions in Iran were not committed to the ceasefire, or the truce was a ruse all along. For Israel and its allies, the message was unmistakable. The war was far from over. Retaliation was now inevitable. The region braced for the next, even more dangerous phase. Iran's missile attack, a direct violation of the fragile ceasefire, provoked immediate and widespread fury across Israel. The nation, already on edge, was suddenly thrust into a state of high alert. Government officials convened emergency meetings, while citizens took to the streets in protest, demanding a decisive response. The sense of shock quickly turned to resolve, as Israel's leadership vowed not to let the attack go unanswered. Defense Minister Israel Katz wasted no time, ordering a series of intensified strikes on regime targets deep within Tehran. This marked a dramatic escalation, signaling that Israel was prepared to take the conflict directly to the heart of Iran's power. The skies above Tehran lit up as Israeli jets launched precision attacks, targeting military installations and government facilities. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich captured the national mood, declaring, "Tehran will shake." His words echoed through the media, fueling a sense of unity and determination among Israelis. Politicians from across the spectrum rallied behind the government's tough stance, while ordinary citizens braced for what was to come. Israel soon claimed it had achieved air superiority over Tehran, crippling key elements of Iran's military and government infrastructure. The air campaign was relentless, with waves of jets striking strategic targets, disrupting communications, and sowing confusion among Iranian forces. The campaign's impact was devastating. Top Iranian commanders were eliminated, government buildings lay in ruins, and a prominent nuclear scientist was reportedly killed in the strikes. The loss sent shockwaves through Iran's leadership, who scrambled to assess the damage and respond. Reports emerged that hundreds of Basij operatives had been killed, and even the notorious Evin prison, long a symbol of regime power, was not spared from the onslaught. The destruction of the prison sent a powerful message about the reach and determination of Israel's military campaign. As the Israeli war cabinet met to plan next steps, officials promised a response that would not only shake the Iranian capital, but also alter the balance of power in the region. The gloves were off. With both sides now fully committed, the conflict was set to intensify, threatening to spiral into a much larger regional war. Around the world, people watched in fear and uncertainty as leaders gathered for emergency meetings and news outlets reported on the rapidly escalating crisis. The question on everyone's mind: what would come next? The 12-day war has left a devastating human toll. In Israel, at least 28 people were killed and over 1,000 injured, with families forced into shelters and lives upended. The psychological scars, especially for children, will last for years. In Iran, the toll was even higher, nearly 1,000 killed and thousands more wounded, as Israeli airstrikes devastated military and civilian sites alike. Hospitals are overwhelmed and entire neighborhoods lie in ruins. Strategic losses for the regime are matched by the suffering of ordinary civilians. For both nations, the cost of war is measured in shattered lives and broken communities. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. The Iran-Israel conflict has spilled across the Middle East, igniting old flashpoints and drawing in new actors. In Iraq, drone strikes damaged military sites, highlighting the country's vulnerability as a battleground for regional powers. Lebanon saw Israeli drone attacks, risking a second front with Hezbollah and raising fears of a wider war. Even Qatar, the diplomatic mediator, was hit, its airspace violated and its sovereignty challenged by Iranian missiles. These spillovers show the conflict is not contained. It's a regional contagion threatening to engulf the entire Middle East. Each new attack risks dragging more countries into the abyss. The longer the core conflict continues, the greater the danger of a multi-front catastrophe. The region teeters on the edge of a wider disaster. Amid the chaos, frantic diplomacy unfolded behind the scenes. The US and Qatar, with their unique ties to the warring parties, brokered the short-lived ceasefire, announced unconventionally by Donald Trump on social media. The world was watching, and history was being made in real time. As diplomats scrambled, the US evacuated 250 citizens from Israel, underscoring the severity of the crisis. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation worsened, especially for Palestinians, as resources and attention shifted to the Iran-Israel war. The UN warned that aid for millions of refugees could soon run out, deepening the region's suffering. War's consequences ripple far beyond the battlefield. As June 24th dawns, the Middle East faces profound uncertainty. The ceasefire is in ruins, and Iran's post-truce missile attack has left Israel poised for massive retaliation. The next phase could see even more devastating airstrikes and a full-scale regional war. The international community's credibility as mediator is on the line, with the risk of a wider conflagration growing by the hour. Attacks in Iraq, Lebanon, and Qatar are a preview of the chaos that could engulf the region. The future now hinges on decisions made in Tel Aviv and Tehran. The hope for peace is fragile, the threat of disaster all too real. The coming days will determine whether the region spirals into catastrophe or finds a path back from the brink. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia.